when we connect with the source, it is not that we become hard-hearted. We become very soft-hearted. Vaishnava philosophy teaches us that when we actually connect with Krishna, we see janmadhyashayataha, that everything is emanating from Krishna. Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam, all material and spiritual things are the energy of Krishna. Therefore, we see Krishna's presence in everything that exists. We see everything as meant for the pleasure of Krishna. We see every living being as a part of Krishna. Therefore, there is universal, infinite love for Krishna, which manifests as compassion and love for every living being, and respect and honor for everything that exists. This is Krishna consciousness. So as these gopas were playing and dancing and doing so many games, whatever games have ever been played in the entire world, the origin of all games is Goloka Vrindavan. Not the Brahma Jyoti, not even Vaikuntha, Goloka. Where all games are expressions of the pure love of the soul between God and Prem. The Prem shared between Krishna, the devotees, and the devotees with each other. At that time, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Srila Prabhupada explain that Krishna and his friends would get so absorbed in playing together. They would be so conquered by the love that they would share with one another. There is no way that they could ever stop playing. But at the same time, prasad was there. So by Krishna's own Yogamaya, Lila Shakti potency, every day, just before lunchtime, some asura would come to Vrindavan to break up their play and really build up their appetite so they could even enjoy the prasad more. And this time, the Lila Shakti, the pastime potency of the Lord, affected the Paramatma, the super soul, in the heart of Aghasura. Kamsa, he was really frustrated. He sent so many asuras to Vrindavan to kill Krishna and the Vrijabasis, but they all died. Kamsa called Agha. He said, your older sister, Putana, was killed by Krishna as a baby. And your older brother, Bakasura, was killed by Krishna. You are the most powerful, the most ferocious, undefeatable. You are the one who can avenge the death of your family members by killing Krishna. I order you to go to Vrindavan. On this particular day, Agha appeared, and he was watching how much fun Krishna was having with all the gopas. He couldn't tolerate it. This is the nature of envy. A devotee is paradukkha dukhi. That means another person's suffering is my suffering. Another person's happiness is my happiness. That's the nature of the soul. That's love. But when there's envy, everything becomes perverted. I enjoy seeing other people struggle and suffer and fail because it makes me feel better about myself. and other people's happiness is a threat. Why not me? I deserve. Aghasur was so envious. He could not tolerate seeing the happiness of these children. His mind was burning with anguish. And he was determined to kill them all, to prove his supremacy. He was a mystic. By the cities that he had acquired, Mahima city, he manifested the body of a gigantic serpent, specifically a python. And his body extended 8 miles long. And he opened his mouth. He had a huge mouth. The bottom lip was on the ground, and the top was in the clouds. You may say that's impossible, but that's your problem. People could do incredible things if they want. Just because you can't do it, and nobody you knows can do it, it doesn't mean nobody can do it. In Kali Yuga, we're all dwarfed by limitations. He was thinking in his mind, this is the mentality of an envious person. That here is Krishna. He killed my brother and sister. In honor of my brother and sister, to offer them the pinda of sesame seeds and water, I am going to kill Krishna. Not only am I going to kill Krishna, but I'm going to kill all the calves and all the cowherd boys. And if I kill them, all the parents, the brothers, the sisters, the cows, they will all die because they cannot live without Krishna and their children. In this way, through one swallowing act, I am going to completely annihilate the entire population of Vrindavan. That was his demoniac mentality. He opened his mouth and waited. Now, this day was Balaram's appearance day. Because it was his birthday, he sent a message to Krishna that I'm not allowed to go and play with all of you today because I have to give charity to the Brahmins and I have to let my parents do all kinds of yagyas and different types of rituals for my birthday. So Balaram was not there. Meanwhile, the Gopas see Aghasur, and they were thrilled, thinking, what an incredible scenic piece of landscape that has been created here in Vrindavan for us to play with. Let's go play. And as they got closer, some of the little cowherd boys, they said, this looks like a gigantic living python. And they got scared and started running away. And the other boy said, no, no, don't be afraid. Come, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Krishna will save us. And as they got closer, they were all sharing with each other what they were seeing. Is this some gigantic statue that looks like a python? Or is it really a python? Look, his mouth is so big it's touching the clouds, and his teeth are like the peaks of mountains, and his tongue is like a wide highway. And that fishy smell that's coming out of his mouth, which is very warm, is because he eats all kinds of animals and living beings. And as they were looking, They were thinking, if this is a python, and if he swallows us, then Krishna will save us. Aghasur, he was swallowed by Krishna, and look at how Krishna killed him. So let's go in. And they were clapping their hands, laughing, singing the glories of Krishna as they ran in the mouth of Aghasur. And all the little calves, so innocent, with their tails raised, with tears of affection in their eyes, with smiles on their faces, they ran in after the cowherd boys into the mouth of Aghasur as Krishna was standing watching. Krishna knew who this was. He was the most dangerous, mystical asura. He came to kill them. Krishna decided, I will stop them. But before he could stop them, they were all smiling. Every one of the calves and cowherd boys were looking at Krishna as they were clapping their hands and running deep into the belly of Aghasur. Now, how is it possible? If Krishna's the controller of all controllers, why is it that he couldn't stop his friends from going in? Because Krishna's controlled by love. Krishna actually wanted to stop his friends from going in. But his friends, out of their love for Krishna, they wanted to go in just so that Krishna could do something wonderful to save them. And ultimately, Krishna had his desire to stop them, and they had their desire to go in and see Krishna's Lilas. And Krishna was conquered by the love of his devotees. Meanwhile, Aghasur kept his mouth open because he was waiting for the killer of his brother and sister. Krishna was thinking how to kill this demon without hurting my friends who are inside the body of Aghasur. Then Krishna made his plan, and he entered into the mouth and the belly of Agha. The mouth closed. It was absolutely pitch dark inside of his stomach. And pythons have a special power where they have in their stomachs, they contract it so they could crush any animal that they eat. And he was just about to crush Krishna and all the calves and gopas. And the little cowherd boys, they fell unconscious as if dead, because there was no air and there was no light. And worse than that, in that pitch darkness, they couldn't see Krishna. So they were in so much separation, they just fell and lost all life. Krishna began to expand his body. And as he expanded, he filled up Aghasura's body. And Aghasura, as a mystic yogi, he expanded, and Krishna expanded, and he expanded, and Krishna expanded. But when it comes to competition of yogic powers, Krishna is Yogeshwara. He is the supreme mystic from whom all yogic powers are coming from. So Aghasura, because Krishna filled him so much, no air could go in or out. He was suffocating. And ultimately, he gave up his life. And that life force, it had nowhere to go. It burst through a hole from the top of his head and went into the sky in the form of a brilliant light and remained there. This is interesting because it's the only time in Vrindavan Lila that Krishna actually changed his form or exerted himself for any reason. When he lifted Govardhan Hill, he was that little 7-year-old boy just effortlessly holding it with the tip of the little finger of his left hand. When he killed the monstrous Rakshashi Putana, he remained a tiny little baby, just a few days old. And same with when Krishna showed the universe in his mouth, or even when Yashoda Mai took hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of meters of rope to tie up Krishna, his waist was still a little baby waist. Because he didn't want to interfere with the intimacy of his devotee's love for him as a friend and a child. But in Aghasura, all the cowherd boys were unconscious, so they couldn't see. And because he was in Agha's mouth and it was closed, Yashoda and Nanda and nobody else could see. So there was no one witnessing him. So he grew and grew and grew and grew into a magnificent size. And ultimately, Aghasura lost his life. His mouth opened. Krishna glanced upon the gopas and the calves and brought them back to life. And they saw Krishna. And Krishna asked all of them to go outside, and they all clapped their hands and danced and went outside of Aghasura. And at the very end, Krishna came out. Then something amazing happened right in front of everyone. The jiva, the atma, the soul of Agha, which was waiting in the sky, merged into the body of Krishna. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami tells, it's very rare for a demon to get liberation. Sayujya Mukti. But Krishna gave many of those asuras that he killed liberation into his eternal, all-pervading effulgence, the Brahman. For Putana, his sister, he gave the liberation of being his own motherly nurse in Goloka Vrindavan. Because Putana gave that motherly service to Krishna, her whole family was especially dear to Krishna, even Aghasura. And right in front of everybody's eyes, Aghasura achieved Sarupya Mukti, which means taking the liberated position of one of Krishna's personal associates in the spiritual world of Vaikuntha. They just had a wonderful, fun time running and dancing into his mouth. And they were so much looking forward to anything that this Asura would do so that Krishna would save them. Because they were in his mouth, he was associating with these gopas who were having such happy experience with him. And because of that association, he was actually transformed. And at the last moment, he was actually relishing their association. And therefore, he was given eternal loving service in this spiritual world by Krishna's grace. The Aghasura, according to Thakur Bhaktivinoda, represents the mentality that causes us to be harsh, mean, or cruel to others due to envy. This is a great obstacle on the path of bhakti. And as Aghasura was considered one of the greatest of all the demons, this is one of the greatest impediments within our own hearts. envy, which just causes us to disrespect and mistreat others. Instead of serving that propensity, we should recognize it for what it is. Sometimes we speak about the good dog and the bad dog, the divine and the demoniac nature within all of us. Well, this Aghasura is within all of us, invoking us to cause harm to others due to our envy. But somehow or other, if we take shelter of the Lord, we have no power against Aghasura. But by the grace of Krishna, he can liberate us, as he liberated the cowherd boys from Aghasura. And Krishna is none different than his name. We simply have to learn to take shelter of chanting these holy names. Jai jatha mam prapadyante. Krishna says, as you approach me, I reward you accordingly. Krishna entered into Aghasura's mouth, or let us say Krishna entered into Aghasura's body, and in reciprocation, Krishna allowed Aghasura to enter his body. And in doing so, went back home, back to Godhead. Shukadeva Goswami told Parikshit Maharaj that this happened during Krishna's Komara Lila. Komara Lila is from Krishna's birth until he's 5 years old. And the Poganda Lila is from 6 till 10 years old. Shukadeva Goswami said that after Aghasura was killed, his body dried up, and the skin of his body became a favorite playground for the cowherd boys. But it wasn't until 1 year later that the cowherd boys told the people in the village of Vrindavan about the liberation of Aghasura. But they told it as if it happened on that same day. Shukadeva Goswami Parikshit Maharaj was very fascinated by this. How is it possible? This incredible Leela, they didn't talk about it for 1 full year. And when they did, they spoke about it as if it happened that day. Shukadeva Goswami begins the next chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam by praising Parikshit Maharaj, that you are Bhagavat Uttama. You are the best of devotees. You are the best of the devotees because you're so eager to hear more and more and more. And the nature of Krishna's pastimes, they are ever new. Even if you hear the same pastime 100 million times, or even asankhya times, 100 quadrillion times, the same Leela. If you're actually tasting devotion, every time you hear it, it will be sweeter and fresher and newer. Because Krishna is Navayovanam Cha. He's ever fresh, he's ever new. And similarly, his names are ever fresh and ever new. This is the test of how we're actually awakening our devotion. We're chanting this Maha Mantra. How many names have we chanted? Rupa Goswami tells us what his experience is. How much nectar the 2 syllables Krishna produce. When those 2 syllables dance on my tongue, I desire many, many, many tongues. And when that sound vibration of Krishna's name enters into my ears, I'm so thirsty. It's so nectarine. I desire millions and millions and millions of ears. And when it comes into the courtyard of my heart, it conquers my consciousness. These pastimes of Krishna are ever fresh and ever pure. If you don't know anything but one simple story of Krishna, you can repeat that story for the rest of eternity and never get bored. It will get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter every time if you're actually accessing Krishna's real mercy. Here is Parikshit Maharaj. He fasted till death. He had 7 days to live. He's sitting on the bank of the Ganges. He's not drinking water. He's not eating food. And yet, he's so much relishing the nectar of Krishna Katha. In another place, Parikshit Maharaj says, previously, when I was thirsty, I made an aparad to Samik Rishi. But now, drinking the nectar of the river Ganges, of Hari Katha, stories about Krishna flowing through my ears into my heart, it's unsatiable. He says, I'm feeling absolutely no desire for drinking anything or eating anything or going to sleep. And Shukadev Goswami, he explains, when those who are listening are eager to hear about Krishna, they empower the speaker to speak about Krishna. Because Krishna within the heart of the speaker sees how eager you are to hear, so Krishna empowers the speaker to speak with greater enthusiasm and empowerment. Sometimes in Hari Katha, the listeners are more empowered than the speakers. It's a reciprocation of love. Shukadev Goswami said, I will explain everything to you, Parikshit Maharaj, because you are so eager to hear. And there is no secrets that a spiritual master wants to hide from a truly submissive and eager disciple. He said, after Aghasura was liberated, Krishna brought all of his cowherd boys to the bank of the Yamuna River. And they all sat down. Krishna said, this is such a beautiful, wonderful place to perform our Lila of eating our lunch today. The sand is so clean and it is so soft. And here at this part of the Yamuna River, there's fragrant pollen on the banks from the many, many luxurious lotus flowers that are blossoming all around us. And can you hear all of these humming bees that are mad after the nectar of the lotuses and the Yamuna? And can you hear the parrots singing and the cuckoos cawing? Let us all enjoy our lunch here. All the little gopas sat in circles around Krishna. Shukadev Goswami describes Krishna was like the whirl of a lotus flower, and all the cowherd boys were like the petals of the lotus flower in a circle around him. And there were so many. And each boy was looking at Krishna. And by Krishna's inconceivable power of Bhaktavatsal to show affection to his devotees, even though they were in circles on all sides around Krishna, every gopa was thinking, not only thinking, he was experiencing that Krishna is only looking at me. This is Krishna. There's so many other gopas here. All of them are more qualified than me, but Krishna loves me so much, he's only looking at me, and all the thousands and thousands of cowherd boys are simultaneously, unblinkingly, like honeybees drinking from the lotus-like face, the beauty of Krishna. Nothing could be higher than that exchange of loving glances on the banks of the Yamuna between the Gopas and Krishna. And then one boy, he took out some of the preparations from his bag and he tasted it. And he said, "Krishna, this is so good. Why don't you try it?" And he'd take it right out of his mouth and give it to Krishna. And Krishna would try it. He'd say, "This is very good." And he'd give it to another boy. And Krishna would take something from Yashoda's box and take a bite and start sharing it. And they were all sharing their different prasad and praising the flavors and the textures and the fragrances and joking and laughing. A bumblebee came by. Bzzz, and Krishna said to the bumblebee that, "I know why you have come. You have come because you are attracted to Madhu Mangal, my Brahmin cowherd boyfriend. But beware, Madhu Mangal, because he has come to taste the nectar. But bumblebee, be careful. It is a great sin if you kill a Brahmin." Now you're not laughing, but when Krishna said this, there was uproarious, tumultuous laughter that was filling the 14 worlds by the cowherd boys. Anything Krishna says is absolutely pleasing to the heart because it's said with such affection. Some of the boys looked and they saw some monkeys and they started telling jokes and they started talking to the monkeys. "Oh, monkeys, if you want some good prasad, go attack that boy over there. He has very nice prasad." And they all laughing, and Krishna was laughing. And one boy took a samosa and broke it open and emptied out the sabji, vegetables of the samosas, and filled it with jasmine flower petals, packed it in. And then he closed up the samosa very expertly, and he gave that samosa to another gopa. And he said, "Just taste this, my mother made this, it's so nice, it's a samosa." And the gopa ate it. And jasmine flowers smell nice, but they're very bitter. So when he bit into it, he made a really one of those expressions after you eat something bitter. And all the other cowherd boys, including Krishna, were watching him, and they laughed and laughed and laughed. And the gopa that ate it, out of ecstatic anger, he playfully started beating up the gopa that made that samosa. And everyone laughing, and such intimacy of love. There's a story where one gopa said to Krishna that, "I have a very, very nice sweetmeat that my mother has given me. Close your eyes and open your mouth." And Krishna opened his mouth and he threw a flower in the mouth. And everyone was laughing, and Krishna was laughing. Meanwhile, after Krishna liberated Aghasura, the demigods were so afraid of Aghasura. They were performing pujas and mudras and doing all sorts of prayers that somehow this Agha would die. And when they saw Krishna, how incredibly he manifested, not only killing Aghasur, but giving him liberation into Vaikuntha, something even the demigods cannot attain, they were celebrating like anything. And Lord Brahma, he heard about this. And he saw the mystical liberation of Aghasura. And he saw they were celebrating all over the universe. So Brahma came down just to see, what is this cowherd boy Krishna? He knew that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But inherently, every soul knows that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the covering of Maya bewilders us to forget. So Brahma and the Devas, they were watching Krishna. According to the Vedic literatures, Krishna's name is Yagyabhuk, which means he's the enjoyer of sacrifices. The Devas, the greatest of the Brahmins and the Rishis and the Yogis, they do yajna with the fragrant, pure ghee from Surabhi cows, and when it's offered with precise mantras and exact rituals with perfect motivations, Krishna accepts it. And here that same Krishna is just eating the food right out of the mouths of these little cowherd boys. This was incredible. To see God like this, unbelievable. Brahma was, I have to test this Krishna. Brahma became bewildered by this. Vrindavan Lila was just so sweet and so intimate and so spontaneous that God, the Almighty, is totally conquered in such a way that he's just playing like a totally ordinary little boy with little boys. As they were all eating prasad and laughing and joking together, the calves wandered off, searching for fresher grasses to eat. And when the little cowherd boys, they noticed that the calves were away, they became afraid because they loved their calves. They were responsible to protect their calves. But Krishna did not want them to be disturbed. He said, all of you stay right here and you enjoy your pastimes of eating prasad undisturbed, and I will personally, by myself, go to bring the calves back. Krishna left. He searched for the calves. He didn't see them. He looked in the pastures, in the forests, in the mountains, in the mountain caves. He didn't see the calves anywhere. Then he came back to the place on the bank of the Yamuna, and all the gopas were gone. And Krishna, in his playful Lila, was thinking, where have they all gone? I know where they have gone. Brahma has taken them. Lord Brahma had stolen all the calves and cowherd boys, put them into a state of mystical sleep, and hid them in a cave in a solitary place where no one could find them. Meanwhile, the sun was descending toward the horizon, and it was time for Krishna and all the gopas and calves to return home. And Krishna was thinking, what will happen to the mother cows and the mothers of the children if I return home without them? Krishna then, by his own sweet will, manifested personally the forms of all the unlimited calves and the large population of gopas. Incredibly, Each cowherd boy was Krishna himself. And Krishna manifested himself with the exact physical features of each and every one of them. He was wearing the same clothes, the same jewelry. He had the same exact personalities and mannerisms, the same sound of his voice, the same little identical sticks and flutes and buffalo horns. And each calf was identical in every way. Krishna is the source of everything that exists. Whether philosophically we know Krishna, his Achintya Shakti, he could do anything. But in Vrindavan, the way he does it is just so sweet, so attractive, that it melts our hearts and awakens our love. And then Krishna, who was in the form of all the gopas, was playing with himself. And Krishna, in the form of all the calves, were calling all the calves. And all the calves who were Krishna were running up and reciprocating with Krishna's love. And then Krishna played his flute, and all the gopas who were Krishna himself started singing and dancing and playing their horns and flutes. And they all came back into the village of Vrindavan. When the mothers of the gopas saw their children, it was an indescribable experience. They embraced their children. They wept tears of affection for their children. They bathed them, they clothed them, they put ornaments on them, they fed them, they smeared them with sandalwood oil and other fragrances. They put them to bed. They fed, after feeding them, nice prasad. But something mystical was there. Because all the mothers, they loved Krishna more than their own children. They loved their children more than anybody could love children. But still, they love Krishna even more. And this is inconceivable. And each one of them, in their heart of hearts, they honored, they worshiped, and they rejoiced the good fortune of Yashoda and Nanda with no envy, with no competition. In their hearts, they cherished a desire to be able to love Krishna and express that love the same way as Nanda and Yashoda. And Krishna knew that desire in their heart. And simultaneous with bewildering Brahma, he gave every one of the elder mothers of Vrindavan the opportunity to personally love him as their mother and experience the exact same ecstasy as Yashoda. And all the fathers, the exact same ecstasy as Nanda Maharaj. And when the little calves came to their mothers, the mother cows also, they longed to love Krishna like Yashoda Mai. And now Krishna became all their little calves. The mother cows seeing their little calves coming home. They didn't know he was Krishna, but somehow or other the love was so incredibly, ever increasingly manifesting. They were licking and licking and licking the children calves as if they were going to swallow them, and milk was pouring from their udders as the little Krishnas were sucking their milk.